Thanks for sharing your Sunday with us. Human rights groups have rounded on Israeli lawmakers for amendments allowing the forced feeding of prisoners on hunger strike. Lawmakers claim the change will reduce the harm done to a prisoner's health, even though the UN's Human Rights Commission regards force feeding as a form of torture. The parliament has also allowed the use of reasonable force against hunger strikers. That's despite the Geneva Convention prohibiting detainees being subjected to any procedures contradicting medical norms. Now, the process of force feeding is invasive and painful. Let's, for a moment, show you how it works here on RT International. Once strapped into a chair with arm restraints, a tube is forced into the stomach. That goes right there through the nostrils. Detainees have compared the pain to razor blades in the throat as nutrients are then pumped inside. American rapper and actor Mos Def, he tried the procedure for himself. I might want to warn you, the video we're about to show you is a bit disturbing.
And then the tube went in, and the first part of it is not that bad, but then you get this burning, and then it just starts to be like really unbearable. It feels like something was going in, or something was going into my brain, and it started to reach to the back of my throat, and I really couldn't take it.
And that clip there was made during the 2013 mass hunger strike at America's Guantanamo Bay prison in Cuba. A former detainee, Moazzam Beg, told us how the method can cause severe harm.
This is setting a dangerous precedent. What we already know is that in the United States, you can't force-feed prisoners, but you can in Guantanamo Bay. The medical profession around the world pretty much has condemned this as a source, as a form of torture. It's difficult to know which method is going to be used in Israel. I was part of some hunger strikes in the early days in the Bagram and in Guantanamo, but I wasn't part of the major hunger strikes which happened after I left. And I know several people have been physically damaged, irreparably damaged over a period of time through the force-feeding process. And I'm shocked to hear that Israel would say that this form of torture is now going to be sanctioned by law.
Well, the RT got in touch with a group called Physicians for Human Rights in Israel. It says the legislation is shameful and that doctors should not serve as a fig leaf for torture. And we also contacted Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International.
Under human rights law, any force-feeding of prisoners amounts to inhuman treatment, which is prohibited under international human rights laws. If Israel does, in fact, force-feed prisoners who are protesting their conditions, including indefinite detention, it will actually make the protest that much louder. When reports come out that these prisoners have been forcibly fed, it will only serve to highlight their plight.
Since 1967, actually, there are dozens of Palestinian hunger strike took place, and none of the hunger strikers actually died because of the hunger strike. What actually happened is when the Israeli authorities tried to force feed the hunger strikers, actually 5 of them died within the practice. We have a bill against forced feeding animals, and we have now, thanks to the government, another bill that allow forced feeding for hunger striker. And this, the Israeli authorities actually trying to deal with the symptoms instead of dealing with the actual problem.
And US-based human rights lawyer Dan Kovalik says that America's full backing of Israel allows it to overstep international law.
It is not legal. And in fact, Israel's own medical society has publicly said it is not legal, that it constitutes torture, and that is also in keeping with decisions by the United Nations, the International Committee on the Red Cross, and the World Medical Association as well. Force feeding of prisoners is universally viewed as torture, as cruel and unusual punishment, and it is universally condemned. With Israel's violation of international law, there's always a lot of hand-wringing at the UN about it, but very little is done because of the Security Council, where the U.S. holds a veto and tends to veto any condemnation of Israel. So probably the best challenge and the best hope the Palestinians have is probably in the hands of good Israelis who oppose this measure.
An Islamic State sympathizer has been charged in the United States for plotting a bomb attack on a public beach in Florida. Harlem Suarez has been on the FBI's radar for several months. Authorities were first alerted in April when he began posting extremist comments on Facebook. In May, Suarez made an ISIL recruitment video where he said that Islamic State will raise its black flag on top of the White House. RT's Maria Finoshna now looking at what's driving young men and women towards radicalism.
One of the world's most notorious and brutal terror organizations, Islamic State still manages to find support all over the globe. No one can say for sure how many have joined its ranks, but they come from a diversity of states. America, waging war against the group, is also on the list of donor countries. Hoda, an Alabama student, gave up her American life and colorful dresses to become the devoted wife of a jihadist fighter in Syria.
I'm not going to come back. This is the right place for me to live, and I'm really ready to die, to meet my God as a true Muslim.
Islamic State's ideology reached her through social networks, and that's what she used to disseminate her message too. Her Twitter account has now been suspended. Research has found that defending Muslims, battling the Syrian regime and marrying a good Muslim are among the top motivations of those joining ISIS. Hoda from Alabama was apparently seeking a combination. A month after her arrival in Syria, she married a mujahid, or fighter, to become a widow just 80 days later.
I'm sure every family controls their kids like I do, but ISIS found somehow, some way to get through.
Alabama University in Birmingham, the 20-year-old started business here before she decided on a different calling, joining the army of ISIS brides in Syria. These walls, as well as her family and community, were incapable of protecting her mind, and she might be not the last.
ISIS propaganda is aggressive and therefore successful, says Joy from an American Christian non-profit organization. Their website was hacked by the extremist group, one of around 4,000 other internet services the same day, from sites for pizza deliveries to car washes.
There was a song, I'm assuming in Arabic, and the only words that I could really make out were jihad and infidels. They may seem like they're offering a way out, but really they're not.
Yet still, so many believe that they do. Maria Finoshna, RT, Alabama, USA.
One reason cited for the radicalization of Muslims is foreign involvement in the Islamic world. Syria is just one of many countries in the region to have been occupied or bombed by American forces since 1980. The list includes Afghanistan, Iraq and Libya, as well as drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen. International affairs analyst Con Hallinan believes it will all eventually backfire.
American foreign policy sort of demands demons. It creates them. For a long time it was communism, and then it's been terrorism. Now it's the Islamic State, because I think the creation of demons plays into what we tend to do better than anybody else, which is we can blow things up. Some of those consequences are going to play out at home. That's why it's a good idea not to engage in a lot of wars, because eventually there are blowbacks and casualties among civilians.
And it's not only overseas interventions. The U.S. is also conducting an extensive anti-terror campaign within its own borders. In fact, here are some of the most prominent Muslim American leaders who have been monitored by the FBI and the National Security Agency, supposedly targeted as terrorists or foreign spies. All of them are either civil rights activists, academics or lawyers, and one is a political candidate. All right, it's RT International live from Moscow. Up next, our report opens the lid on secret CIA experiments carried out during the Cold War.